So, what's the real secret to success? I mean, is it just raw God given talent, or is there something else going on? Today, we're going to dive into Angela Duckworth's incredible book, Grit, because it pretty much challenges everything we think we know about what it takes to achieve great things. And for her, this whole journey started with a really personal and kind of tough experience. So, the author, Angela Duckworth, kicks things off with this really jarring memory from her childhood. Her own dad, well, he would tell her pretty much out of the blue, you're no genius. Can you imagine? It was this constant refrain that just stuck with her, and it planted this really deep question in her mind. And honestly, that's the big question we're tackling here. Our culture is just obsessed with talent, right? We love the idea of the natural. But what if we've got it all wrong? What if our obsession is, well, misplaced? What if the real key to a successful life has nothing to do with being a genius? Okay, so to get to the bottom of this, Duckworth decided to put the whole idea of talent on trial. And she didn't mess around. She picked one of the most demanding, high-stakes places on Earth to run her experiment. And that place is West Point, the United States Military Academy. Now, just getting in here is a huge deal. I mean, you need amazing grades, incredible test scores, a freaking nomination from a member of Congress, and you have to pass this brutal fitness test. They start with over 14,000 applicants and chop that down to just 1,200. We're talking about the absolute best of the best. So, what's their reward for making it in? Oh, just a 7-week initiation program they call Beast Barracks. And just look at the schedule. It's absolutely relentless, a nonstop pressure cooker of physical, mental, and emotional stress. And it's all designed to do one thing: find their breaking point. Okay, but here's the thing that's truly fascinating. Even though these are literally the most qualified kids in the entire country, a shocking number of them quit. We're talking 1 in 5. 1 in 5 of these elite cadets drops out, and a whole lot of them do it during that first, absolutely brutal summer of Beast. Now, for decades, West Point had been trying to figure out who would actually stick it out. They used this thing called the whole candidate score. Think of it as their ultimate metric for talent. It combined everything: SAT scores, class rank, leadership potential, physical fitness. It was their best shot at predicting who was going to succeed. But here comes the big twist. That whole candidate score, this, ultimate measure of talent, it was completely useless at predicting who would quit. No joke. The cadets with the highest scores were just as likely to drop out as the cadets with the lowest scores. Talent was not the answer. So if talent wasn't the key, then what was? Well, Duckworth's research uncovered something else, a factor that was way, way more powerful. She called it grit. And this is really the key definition to get. Grit isn't just about working hard, okay? It's a very specific combination of two things: passion, like a deep, lasting interest in something, and perseverance, which is the stamina to stick with that thing day after day for years on end. And guess what? When Duckworth actually measured the grit of the new cadets, it turned out to be the single best predictor of who would make it through Beast. It was that simple. The grittier cadets, they just didn't quit. But this wasn't just a West Point thing. Duckworth took this idea and tested it in other fields, and she found the exact same pattern. Take a really tough, high-pressure sales job where you're getting rejected all day long. What predicted who would still be there in 6 months? It wasn't how outgoing they were. It was their grit. And the same thing held true in education. She looked at thousands of high school juniors in Chicago, and yep, the grittier students were way more likely to graduate. Once again, grit was a better predictor of success than how much they said they cared about school or even how safe they felt there. Okay, so if the evidence for grit is this strong, why are we still so obsessed with talent? Well, the answer actually lies in a hidden psychological bias that most of us have. Yeah, research shows that we have something called a naturalness bias. It works like this. When you see two people who've accomplished the exact same thing, we subconsciously favor the one we think is a natural talent over the one we see as a striver who really had to grind for it. We might say we value hard work, but deep down, our gut is drawn to the idea of effortless genius. The philosopher Nietzsche actually had a really interesting take on why we do this. He basically said that when we call someone a genius or natural, it's a clever way to protect our own ego. I mean, if their success is some kind of magical, divine gift, then we don't have to compare ourselves to them, right? We don't have to feel bad that we haven't put in the same amount of work. It kind of lets us off the hook. Okay, this brings us to what is maybe the most important idea in the whole book. It's a simple but really profound way to think about achievement, and it breaks down into a couple of simple equations. So the first part of the theory is this: talent times effort equals skill. Think about it. Talent, according to Duckworth, is just how fast you get better at something when you try. So you take your natural ability, you multiply it by the effort you put in, and that gives you your skill level. But that's only half the story. Just having a skill isn't enough. To actually achieve something, you have to use that skill. So the second equation is skill times effort equals achievement. See what happened there? Effort shows up in both equations. It counts twice. Effort builds your skill, and then effort is what makes that skill actually do something in the world. You know, a perfect example of this is the novelist John Irving. This is a guy who was severely dyslexic. He got a C- in high school English and was constantly told he was lazy and stupid. But he said he began to take his lack of talent seriously. He knew he had to compensate with just a massive amount of effort, rewriting every single draft over and over again, and he turned himself into one of America's greatest writers. So what's the big takeaway from all this? How should we think about it in our own lives? Well, it all comes down to this really fundamental difference that can totally change how you see things. And here it is, really the heart of the matter. Your potential, your natural talent, that's just your starting line. It's what you could be, but what you actually do with it, what you accomplish in the real world, that's a whole different story. And that story is written by your grit. And that really just leaves us with one final thought. Look, we can't do much about the talent we were born with, right? That's just the hand we were dealt. But grit, that's something we can actually build. We can cultivate it. So the real question you have to ask yourself isn't, how talented am I? The real question is, how far am I willing to let my grit take me?